Hey everybody, welcome to the Behr Essentials with me, your host Dani Behr. Very excited about our next guest, Mr. Glen Rotner. Hi Glen, I get all my guests to start off saying, what would you say your official title is? And if somebody says, so what do you do, Glen? How did you describe that?
I would say that I am an entrepreneur, and my title would be Chief Band-Aid Officer.
I love that. That's the first. Haven't heard that one. Constantly putting out fires, right?
That is correct.
What does success mean to you personally, and how do you measure it?
Personally, success to me is relationships. Having true relationships in business and personally with family, but it's all about relationships to me. It's not about money.
And on the day to day, just tell our listeners what do you do? We know you're the Band-Aid officer, but what companies are you working with? Do you manage? Do you run?
Well, I'm involved in a bunch of different businesses. I would say I have four buckets of business. I am in the skincare business. I work with Cindy Crawford, and we have the Guthrie Ranker team, a company called Meaningful Beauty. In the tequila business with Casamigos Tequila, the furniture business with Rooms to Go and Cindy Crawford and several other people, and then real estate business. So I would say every day is a hodgepodge of whatever fire needs to be put out during the day, and occasionally trying to be strategic in what are we going to do next.
So I won't say what does a typical day look like because there's nothing typical about any of your
Every
days.
day is different.
So how you obviously are from New York. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you start off in your career? What were you doing? What got you to LA? Just give us some background info.
Sure. Grew up in Long Island and grew up in upper middle class family in Long Island in Roslyn, New York. Went to school back east for a year and then came out to visit my parents and my sister who had moved. It was February during my freshman year. My sister was sitting at the pool having an iced tea, and I had just come out of the sleet of Pennsylvania and decided to move out here and never came back and never went back. So I've been out here now since 1980.
Wow. That's so all of 5 years then, since you're only
Exactly.
25.
Exactly.
And then, so after you move out here, obviously the West Coast, the East Coast is completely different. Everybody feels like they're on a permanent vacation when they first move out here. At what point did you know what you wanted to do, and what was that?
Um, well, I went to school in La Jolla at UC at UC San Diego, and at that point I was going to go work in the family business, which I'll get into in a second. But I graduated college in 3 years. I was an overachiever, kind of stupid in retrospect, but and in doing so I ended up going to business with my girlfriend's mother's boyfriend, trading foreign currencies. And that's what I did. And I stayed in San Diego for a year. Eventually, I did sell that business after 18 months, and I ended up moving back to Los Angeles to work in the family business in 1983, 84.
And what was the family business?
Family business, we manufactured private label merchandise for theme parks, restaurant chains, hotels, the big casino business, and that was the primary business, which I took over running in the family business, and ultimately bought my parents out of that business in the late '90s.
So what would you name you learned, the top three takeaways from learning with doing business with family? Was it positive? Was it a mixed bag of treats? How was your experience working with the family and coming in
That's,
really and taking over?
I would say it's twofold. One, being able to work with my dad and having lunch with my dad every day was one of the highlights of my career. I loved doing that. With that said, when you're a generational business, not necessarily the both generations have the same view on what's going to happen in the future, which is ultimately why I ended up buying my parents out of the business. Um, but I wouldn't give that back for anything. I think that was incredible. I would say that the dynamics of having siblings who are not in the business makes it very challenging because they don't really understand what's going on in the business. So I think that was ultimately it was a challenge at the time, which ultimately was resolved because my sister and I talked. And so communication was probably the second thing. Don't let people assume. You need to let them know exactly what's going on. And then lastly, you got to do what you're passionate about. I went into business and it was a great learn for me, but I wasn't passionate about it.
So it was more of a means to an end in
It
a
was a means to an end. I had gotten married, I had children, I had bills, I had private schools, I had all this stuff that, and it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback. I probably would tell you it was maybe I got to where I got to because I did it, or maybe I would have been in a different place if I didn't do it. I don't know.
And so you bought your parents out in, sorry, what year?
I bought my family out of business in 1998.
And what happened after that? And how did you segue into
Um,
the other company?
Interesting. So at the time, when in negotiating with my parents, well, I will say this: the other thing that I learned, and I was fortunate enough, I got involved in YPO, which is a Young Presidents Organization, which ended up being one of the best things I've ever done. And my closest friends today or some of my closest friends are from that. They helped me through that. Buying your family out of and dealing with your family in an acquisition is tough. So I bought my parents out of the business, and initially it was a fantastic move. And then unfortunately, what happened was the dynamics of 9/11, which I had never foreseen. I had a very diversified business, it was global. We were manufacturing all around the world, we were selling to different verticals within the industry. But what happened, unfortunately, was I didn't realize that they were all based on tourism. So selling to casinos, theme parks, restaurant chains, hotels, I didn't see the commonality of tourism. After 9/11, people stopped traveling.
Mm.
So I walked into my office on September 12th to find a stack this big of cancellations. 90% of my business was canceled. All the orders in house were canceled. I had 500 employees. So it was a wake up call, to say the least.
With that said, how do you pivot under those stressful pressure times? What would you say are the coping mechanisms that you use to stay focused, motivated to get you through those times?
I think, well, probably the most important thing for me was, you know, the initial getting over the shock. And I was able to and I've always been able to deal with adversity through deal with the shock and get over the shock. And then what are you going to do to fix it? So and you go into survival mode. And my survival mode was, what am I going to do for the betterment of myself, my family, and the business and the people that are in my business that I care about? And we ended up being able to do that. I also was fortunate enough to have a incredible partner that helped me through that transition, both of my wife and my business partner, to be able to do so. You need a team. You can't do it by yourself. And I think leaning on those people and my YPO forum were kind of what got me through it.
So we 9/11's behind us, you pivot, you make adjustments to move forward, and then what happens next?
So next thing is we're after about took about 2 years to cut through, get myself to a stable position. I realized I
Just
don't want to
wanted
be
to
in the
interrupt there. You say 2 years, I mean, that's quite a statement because most people expect things to happen quickly, and when they don't, people are unperturbed, or should I say perturbed and left not really knowing what to do because it's taken much longer time. Do you always foresee things planning longer than expected, or was this just one of those, once in a lifetime occasions that no one had any experience in before and no one knew what was going to happen? Or do you always
both.
do you always plan? Yeah.
Both. I know. This was my first real adversity at that level. Like I'd had adversity before, but never to the fact where I have 80% of my business is gone overnight. I have bank debt. I have employees that I have to meet payroll. I don't take a paycheck for 18 months. I have three children, all in private school, um, a wife, family, a mortgage, and I've got to figure out what to do. So I knew it would take long. I didn't think it would take that long. I didn't. I would tell you in retrospect, I probably should have not. I should have not held on and walked away, but I didn't. And again, maybe that was that door. staying open allowed me to get to where I am today. I don't know the answer to that. I think people tend to. There's a fine line between sticking your nose in the ground and grinding it out, and also knowing when to fold your cards and not waste your time anymore. I'm not sure if I made the right decision 100%, to be honest with you, Danny.
Do you think it was because you had something to prove to your parents as well? Because you did buy the family business that was there because it was a family business. Did you feel a little bit of pressure to keep it going and to continue the success? Would you say that was
No, I
more?
felt the no less about them, more about because I'd paid them the majority of the money up front. More about not letting my partner down. That had my best friend lent me part of the money to buy my parents out,
Right.
and I didn't want to let him down, and I didn't, and I paid him back every dollar, and every interest payment was met.
So cut 2 years, you finally got yourself out of the woods there. At that point, what happens? Do you decide to fold it up and move forward or?
Well, during the 2 years, I realized that the business, what we were doing domestically, wasn't something I wanted. I didn't want to have labor. I didn't want to have all the overhead and all the responsibilities in a factory, particularly in Southern California with the air quality issues, with Southern California electric bills and
Mhm.
unionization and all those things. I decided I didn't want to do that. So my goal was stabilize that part of the business and sell it off, which I ended up doing in 2006. So 2 years later. But what I did during that 2 years of time is I looked at myself and I said, what can I do that, what am I good at? And one of the things I had done is I had set up an office in Hong Kong in 1989 and an office in Bangkok in 91. That was way before it was in vogue to be doing business in Asia. And I was, at the time, 27, 28 years old when I started these facilities there, and people weren't going there yet. People didn't start going there to the mid 90s. So, in a bigger way. So I had these resources and I decided, you know what? I know how to source things, and things are like widgets. And I decided, instead of selling the type of product I was selling, let's look at other opportunities. That's why I got into the furniture business. And in 2004, 2003, 2004, and I got the license with my partner, Jeff, and for Disney, for kids furniture for North America. I put that deal together, which we still have 20 years later.
Wow.
A year after that, I got in the furniture, stayed in the furniture business, and I put together a deal with Cindy Crawford to put together a furniture line, which we still have to this day, which we built into a very sizable business. So that was the pivot. How do I get into another industry, stabilize the manufacturing facility and that business, which I ended up selling in '06?
What would you say? I mean, you talk about communication, you talk about perseverance. What would you say are your personal qualities that you believe have contributed to your success?
100% honesty um, and constant communication. I despise in people that people avoid telling you the truth. I would rather have bad news if it's honest and you're upfront with me than lying to me. If I lend you money and you can't pay me back, just say I can't lend you back. Don't give me the stories about what goes on. It was no different. I owed money, I had issues, and I overly communicated. Maybe to a fault.
Maybe to a fault. But at least they know where they stand with you, right? So, yeah.
You always will with me.
When you and obviously working with Cindy Crawford, who's I'm sure gets offers every day of the week, right, for her to be involved in or be a partner in some capacity. How do you approach risk taking, career decisions? How do you decide which ventures to pursue, which ones to say thanks but no thanks? What is it about a venture? And I guess that would pivot into Casamigos or the furniture that makes you so interested, especially when it's very early stages.
Um, well, one, I have to believe in it in my heart that I think it has a chance for success. So and I think I'm pretty good at that. Um, I bet on the people the most. Do I think it's going to work in my gut, and do I want to bet on that pony? Do I think that the people that are going to run that business are capable of delivering on the promise of whatever the business is? So in every investment I make, I always look at those things primarily, um, because anybody could show you anything, and I see lots and lots and lots of deals. So those would be the two biggest things.
So if somebody's coming to you with a deal or a new product or service and they're pitching to you, what would you say are the three things they need to show you in that meeting if it's just themselves and a a digital deck?
Um, they need to, well, first of all, never send me never read to me a digital deck you already sent me. That's my biggest pet peeve. I said, if you send it to me and I'm taking your meeting, I read it. So to come in and then give me the PowerPoint presentation and regurgitate what you've already sent to me, that would be a strike. So that would be number one.
Good to know.
Num- number two would be just on my gut. Do I think that these people have integrity? I'd like to understand their background as well, and I ask them a lot of things are about their hobbies. What do they like to do? I'll give you a perfect example. I interviewed somebody once, and he told me that he loved cross country running and he loved to be by himself all the time.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, this is the CEO of a company that's going to have to build a team, and he likes to only run by himself for 26 miles, 20 miles at a time. I didn't invest in the guy. That's He might be really successful, but that's not the type of person I want. Someone that likes team sports, that likes how the team build, and that would be another thing I would look at. And then probably the last thing would be, and how much background does this person have in the industry that they're trying to solicit my investment?
Good to know, everyone listening. What how did that Casamigos deal happen? Was that just a matter of obviously Cindy being married to Randy, you guys chatting about it at dinner? I'm sure everybody would love to know how such a huge product and company started out.
Um, you know, Cindy and Randy and George he wasn't married at the time, had homes at El Dorado and Cabo at Mike's property, and they built this. They created this house tequila that was actually named after their little two homes called Casamigos, House of Friends, and they wanted their friends after trying it, after many batches of it, said, you guys should try and sell this, and let's make
So
it
it
into a
so it
business.
started off as a passion project or just for fun between
It was supposed to
between
be
George
this
and
the
Randy?
house tequila. It was
Wow.
supposed to be the house tequila. They ended up making like 700 samples. They started bringing in like 1,000 bottles at a time, and like they were like, "You can't do this. Like you can't just bring in samples." So, and their friends started trying it, and their friends like, "This is really good." So next, like let's get a go at it. Randy is in the hospitality business, and George is an actor, and Mike's in the real estate business, and
What year
so
is this,
Mike
Glenn? What year was all
this
this happening?
this is like 2010, 2011. And then myself and one of Mike's partners, we started working on the backside of it. How do we put this together? Dealing with the distillery, hiring a sales team, and all that stuff. So we ended up launching in 2013 Casamigos. That's how it happened.
And what were the bumps in the road with the alcohol business itself, or was it on a pretty fast trajectory?
I got to tell you, it's been one lightning in a bottle. It's just one of those things that probably won't be replicated. And if it does, then that would be fantastic. But the stars aligned. We I think we had foresight. Randy had the foresight in particular that tequila had one premium player, was Patron, and we were going to go after Patron. We started when we did zero, said we are going to be bigger than Patron someday, and that was always the goal. That was the target. There was nobody else. And 4 years later, in 2017, we sold it to Diageo, which
Congratulations.
is yeah.
How is it different working with a brand and running you sort of the whole back end, like you said, with operations and from the ground up, than working with sort of an icon like Cindy Crawford, who you're dealing with as a partner? I'm assuming.
Yes, yes. Cindy is my business wife, she refers
Not
to
a
me as her
bad business wife to
business
have.
husband.
Most people would say, Glenn,
Yes,
you've done quite well.
I guess. Well, I would say that I've known Randy for 40 years. He went to college with my sister, and way before I met Cindy. She's a absolutely wonderful human being inside and out. She's incredibly smart, and we each know what our strengths are, and we try not to play in each other's sandboxes, and it makes for a great relationship.
What's in the pipeline for Glenn? I mean, you've had so much success in so many different areas. What is something you haven't tried that you've always wanted to give it a go at?
I'm looking at. I'm right. Look, right now I'm looking at a play in the apparel world with one of my dear friends and with with a celebrity, but we would be partners in it. I think a lot of times what happens in a lot of these businesses is celebrities are hired as guns for hire, and they do the minimum amount, and I don't think that works. And this would be a true partnership. We all write a check, and it would be true equity. And I think there's an opportunity. I can't say who it is at this point, but I would tell you that he is one of the biggest stars in the world.
And as far as dealing with celebrities, because you do have egos and they have other, their day jobs, if you like, with whether they're singing or acting, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
And it seems to be that every celebrity has a brand and a alcohol and a makeup and they're all putting their names to these different brands. Do you find that we still in that celebrity world where it's everything? It just helps with marketing, getting it over the line, or not necessarily? And do you think
Well,
Casamigos would be as successful without a George at the helm, an international superstar?
well, I think that gave you audience because what it does is it allows you to get eyeballs in front of your product without having to spend a ton of money on marketing. You know, Casamigos, for example, we traditionally up until this year when we decided to start getting involved in some sports advertising, we had never advertised. We did everything through our house of friends and our celebrity house of friends and parties that we threw. But I would say um, celebrity can be a blessing and a curse. Number one, the product has to be good. If the product isn't good, you don't get a reorder, and it sits on the shelf. Number two, customers know when it's BS. They see right through it if it's an endorsement or if it's truly they believe in it or not. And I would say the last thing would be does the celebrity that's endorsing this product, does it make sense for he or she to be involved with this product? A lot of times I feel that it's inauthentic when I look at certain celebrities that are endorsing things and I'm like, what the, WTF? Seriously? So I think those are the things. It's got to be authentic, it's got to be good product, and it has to um, be a product that makes sense.
Going back to the beginning, I suppose, who would you say are your biggest mentors? Who were the leaders in your life that inspired you and maybe encouraged and supported you and potentially been influential in your career journey?
One, I would say the number one would be my YPO friends. I was always a lot younger than everyone, and I was fortunate enough to be around some of the smartest people and most successful people in different parts of the world. And I always have been inspired and aspire to be as successful as they are in what they do. And I still, to this day, am just as driven as I was when I was 21 years old, graduated from college. I have this passion for being successful, and it's not whether it's monetary or personal intrinsic satisfaction. That though it's, but it would be my YPO friends. My dad in the beginning, my dad's 89, and his accounting acumen to this day is he's as sharp as a tack, and very impressive. Um, and then probably the last one would be my partner and my oldest friend, Jeff. Um, he's just a marketing genius.
And would you say, if you were to give advice to somebody starting out who wants to go down that entrepreneurial road, would you say joining one of these YPOs or some sort of a community is recommended? And what advice would you give a young professional, especially in this day and age where everything's
Unfortunately,
changing?
yeah, sure. No, unfortunately, YPO isn't open unless you already are a CEO or a managing director, because you have to have a minimum of 50 employees or 100 employees. You have to have certain revenues. But there are organizations like YEO, which are a little less stringent. I think anytime you can have a place where you can have idea exchange, free idea exchange without judgment, no matter where you get that from, even if it's with a group of friends, that they're a safe place. That to me is, you know, because I think people tend to convince themselves that they're right, as opposed to, you know, looking at it from other people's perspective and taking it. Doesn't mean they're right or wrong, but at least listen.
If you had to say what was your most proudest achievement, obviously besides your incredible marriage to your amazing wife and your three beautiful kids and now grandkids, on a career level, what would you say you're the most proud of, and what lessons did you learn from that experience?
Getting through the 9/11 by far. You don't learn. You learn through tragedy and through adversity much more than you learn through success. It sounds so cliche, but it's just the truth. I learn all the time when things get screwed up, not when things are good.
That's a good lessons to learn. What do you do to maintain that healthy work-life balance? Because when you are an entrepreneur, there is no switching off. It's you, and you're in charge of a lot of people and responsibilities. And so how do you maintain that healthy life? Because I know you love to travel, but I noticed as well, Glenn, that you and Dorit tend to take a work trip and you make it fun. You turn it into a sort of a mini vacay if possible. But
Hmm.
is that part of it, or do switch off, turn your phone off at 5 p.m.? What are your rituals?
Never,
Never.
never, never. I make a work trip into fun, but I also make a fun trip into work. I work every day, 7 days a week, and I never won't. As long, well, I hope I don't have to. I don't. Um, I I like working. I do set boundaries though when I travel. Like when we go away in the summertime, I work for 2 hours in the morning and an hour at night, and during the day I don't answer emails or I I do like to stay connected. I don't want to come back after vacation and have 5,000, 4,000 emails. I get 500 emails a day. Just the thought of having 33,000 emails on my desk when I got back would freak me out. So I think I have good people that I work with. I have my right hand who's been with me for 31 years. You know, she helps with a lot of the stuff they do, and my controller, my personal CFO, has been with me for 34 years. So they do help with some of the burdens there.
Are you a bit of a control freak, or are you good at delegation?
I'm good at delegation, but I also am a control freak. Both.
Both. And would you say having both is contributed to your success because you do stay on top of everything, or
Well, there's a difference. I'm a control freak at a higher level. I'm not a control freak in the minutia. So I think there's control freaks that get involved in the minutia and they forget the big picture. I don't do that. I think I've learned to be a controller from above, but I do that through delegation. And I have a pretty good memory still. So I like to follow up with my team in whatever businesses I'm working on and say, tell me what's going on in this thing. And, you know, they're always shocked, like, how do you remember that? And fortunately I do. And I don't have an assistant. I've never had an assistant. I travel. I plan all my own travel. I plan all my own meetings. I make my own phone calls. That's just who I am. So I guess that's the control part of me.
I
In
feel
fact, my wife got so mad at me about 15 years ago of changing plans. She said, "Guess what? You're in charge of making plans from now on because I'm tired of canceling."
and that's why you do make the plans. I love
I
that.
do.
She's learned, she knows best. If someone was talking to you today as a young professional, we do a lot of mentoring and consulting at the Behr Essentials for young people wanting to get into the industry. What do you feel people have to have nowadays to be a successful CEO like yourself, to be a successful entrepreneurial, and what advice you give them when there are knockbacks? Because there are always knockbacks. Some people have more than others. Some businesses work, some don't, just depending on timing and, like you said, with the product and the market. What advice can you give young professionals today to be successful?
One one piece of advice: be a great listener.
And that's that.
The period. I mentor lots of kids and not even kids, young, older than kids. You have to be a good listener. The most successful people I know are sponges, and they don't talk. There's a lot of people that spend most of their time talking and they don't listen, and they're not learning.
There you go. Our listeners have just followed that suit completely. Glen Rotner, thank you so much for being my guest today on the Behr Essentials. I appreciate you joining, and good luck with all the future ventures. Can't wait
Thanks,
to
Dan.
see what they're going to be.
All right. Thanks, hon.
Thanks
Bye.
everyone for watching. Thanks everyone for listening to the Behr Essentials, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.